Hello all and welcome to Wow Crochet Designs. My name is Mary and I'm coming to you today with my favourite top 10 blanket playlist. Now this is the blankets that we've created here on our channel. If you have not seen these blankets and you're joining us new, welcome. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and to click all to receive all our videos, because we make a lot of videos here at Wow Crochet Designs and we make a lot of blankets as well. And I have a top 10 favourite blanket list that I've put together. Now I have to admit a couple of them were difficult as to where I would pop my number one. And some of my regulars will think, wait a minute, why did she pop that one there, that one over there and that one down there? That doesn't seem right. But it is all correct. What I've put here is exactly my list, and I'll explain the reasons why some of them are actually not way up there on the top of the list. But in the meantime, moving right along, let's get on with our very first, which is actually our last favourite. It's my last favourite for the channel. Number 10. Number 10 of our favourite blankets is the temperature blanket. Now, I popped that down as number 10. Our temperature blanket did take a year to create. We were creating that together as a group. I love the idea of doing things together as a group. It's one of our annual projects, and every year we do an annual project here at Wow Crochet Designs. Right now we're doing our jacket that you see right here. But every year we are creating something, and the temperature blanket was one of them. Now, I love the temperature blanket. I love the size of it. I love the size of the squares that you see there, right there on that picture. I love everything about it except one thing. Now, that's the reason why it's number 10 and not way up to number 1 where it should be, is because I'm a bit of a colour freak. I like to make sure everything is in unison, the colours are in the right order, and everything is designed nicely, like in a colour, some sort of colour coordination, if you will. And when you look at the temperature blanket, because you're creating the colours for that day or that week or however you want to do your temperature blanket, it was a bit awkward having like 3 purples in a row, 4 greens in a row, 5 pinks in a row, that sort of thing. And I found it, for me, visually a little bit awkward. But that's the beauty of a temperature blanket. So if you're looking to make something like that, where you are putting your daily temperatures in one color all the way across your blanket, then that's the one to make. But for me, it was number 10 on my list. So there you go. And number 9 on our list is the 5-point star blanket. Now that one there, I do love it. And as you can see in the photos there, it is a very pretty blanket. I love it a lot, but I think I wished I had created at that time the 9-point star or the 12-point star. That's my only gripe with that. Both of those blankets, all 3 of the blankets are created differently. So the technique is a little different. So when we do create, hence the word when we do create a 12-point star blanket or something like that, the corners need to be changed to make the math correct. So we might consider that in the future. Keep your eyes peeled. Number 8 on my list is called the Midwife Blanket. And as you can see in the photo right there, I do love this blanket. It's very, very pretty. It's very lacy, if you will. Not so much lacy, it looks lacy, but it's if you did that in a solid stitch, it would still be warm enough for the young one if you're using the blanket for a baby, yeah? Otherwise, if you're just using your blanket for beauty, this is the blanket to create, because it does look gorgeous. And the only thing I dislike about Call the Midwife Blanket is when I created it, I said you can either pop your hook around the chains or in the chain when doing the spaced areas. And I found that because I like mine very neat, so I popped mine in the chains, and I found the chains were just a little trying for me. Don't you love it? She doesn't like hard work. So that's the only reason why it hasn't made number 1. And I'm giving you reasons why these blankets don't make number 1. And then I'll give you the reason why number 1 is number 1. All right. So moving right along, let's move to number 7. Now, number 7 is the granny square blanket that you see there up on the screen. Now, this is the blanket that when you come to my channel and the very first set of videos you see, videos it says for you, videos that you might be interested. The next one is the granny square blanket. Now, that one there, I loved making that. It was one of our first blankets that allowed me to start making lives on Wednesday. That was the one that triggered off my Wednesday afternoons live. That was the one when people kept saying, but what do you do and how do you? And I thought, you know what, let's do a Wednesday live and we'll talk about it on Wednesday's live. And after we finish the blanket, I'll delete Wednesday's live or not do Wednesday's lives. Well, this many years later, I'm still doing a Wednesday live. So that didn't work. Why is it not number one? Because I wished I had made it a lot bigger. I wished I had made the different colours, and I wished I had used the yarn that I like, not the yarn that I had in stock at that time. But you know what? Sometimes it's great to do a stash busting blanket, and something like that is great for stash busting because you have the coloured squares. All right. So that's number 7 on my list. Number 6 on my list is the Sunshine Bright blanket. Now this blanket I love a lot. As you can see there, I have just the right colors. It is a gorgeous, beautiful blanket, and in actual fact it's made with these squares, the sunburst squares that we have right here, and they're a little different, so be wary when you're making this jacket. Be careful that the square itself is a little different. But the thing I disliked about it, which was really sad for me, even though I love the colors of the yarn, was that yarn is no longer being made. So that yarn is called the Stella range. I loved the Stella range at Bendigo Woolen Mills Yarn, but they no longer make the Stella range. I'm really sad. I was hoping they would bring it back, but they haven't. So the only reason I dislike about the blanket was that I can't get that yarn anymore. Otherwise, it would have been my number 1. But anyway, moving right along. The next blanket is number 5, that is the mystery blanket that we created not long ago actually on the channel. And there it is on the screen right there. And it's beautiful. I love this blanket. I think the only thing I dislike about the blanket, and here it is now, by the way, so you can get to see it. I keep it at the back of my chair. It's made in cotton, so I love that it's made in cotton. And I love the join that we used. I love that join. What? It's like a slip stitch single crochet kind of a join. I love it a lot. The only difference is that I found the count. You had to focus on count. And I think when I'm working on something for the channel, I just want to get through it. I don't want to muck around with count, yeah? But I really had to focus on count because some of the stitches, if they didn't add up this row here, would not work. So you had to make sure that all your count worked out. You had to make sure of that. All right. So moving right along, I just dropped everything. Let's push this back over here again. That was number 5 on my list. Number 4 on my list is, which was also a mystery blanket at the time, the Hexagon Blanket. And there it is. We actually called it the Mystery Hexagon Blanket at the time. And I love this one very much. In fact, this one here was created for YouTube. I created that blanket specifically for YouTube, and I wanted to give it a little kick. Make them in hexagons and then turn that hexagon into a round blanket with the picture that you see right there. And that was just simply divine. I loved the blanket. I loved the stitches I used. I loved everything about it. There was one little thing that did not allow me to make it number 1, is that I would have preferred to have used a different color yarn, and I would have also preferred to have used a different type of yarn. Now that yarn is an acrylic, nothing wrong with it, but I think I would have liked to have used one of my favorite yarns for that blanket because I really, really loved that blanket. So that's the only reason why it hasn't made number 1, but there you go. Number 3 on our list is the Kaleidoscope Blanket. What? My regulars are saying, is she sure? Absolutely. Now, there's a reason why it's number 3 on the list, but check out some of the pictures there. One of the pictures there is a picture of a past blanket that I was creating, and then you've got the original on the chair. Now, again, the only reason it's not number 1 is because pretty much the same reason some of my other ones aren't number 1 is that I didn't use the colours that I wanted. What I wanted to use was 3 colours, and I think I mentioned it in my live yesterday. So there you go. And that's the only reason why, the very only reason why it's number 3 and not number 1. What? Anyway, moving right along, let's move right on to number 2 of my favourite blankets. Now, number 2, this was a blanket that we made together as a group on the channel. It was one of our annual blankets, and I love this blanket so much for many reasons, and it was our swatch blanket that you see right there. Some of the squares that you see right there, and as you can see, there's a lot of squares that we created. I don't think I'll put them all up. I'll just put a few of them up on the channel. I found that every square I made had a different design, but every square that I did make, I loved each square for its own pattern, if you will. And it's a great blanket to create if you want to learn how to make certain stitches. So you make the stitch for that square and you put it aside. You make another stitch for that square and you put it aside. It is a little bit of messing around with size and measurements, trying to get those measurements correct, but otherwise the rest was perfect, and I did love that blanket. I would admit to saying that the actual join that I used is not my favorite join, which is the reason why the swatch blanket is only number 2 on my list. Which brings me to number 1. Now, some of our regulars are saying we know what number 1 is, and since you kept saying you love it and it's not on the list, it must be number 1. So yes, you are correct. Number 1 on the list is the Pretty as a Peacock blanket, and there it is. Isn't it divine? I love this blanket. Now, there are many reasons why I love this blanket, and one of them is the colors that we chose. Now, how we chose those colors was I did a surprise / giveaway here on the channel, and I asked subscribers to choose a yarn that is accessible to me and some beautiful colors and a name for a blanket. That's all I said. They had to choose. I didn't say what I was creating, nothing. The lady who won was Jody Mann, and Jody chose the colors that you see right there. I chose the pattern that was going to be created. This blanket, I will say, was specifically made for YouTube. I have done these stitches in the past and made blankets similar in the past, but this blanket here, the Pretty as a Peacock blanket, was made specifically for YouTube, with the idea that Jody had naming it Pretty as a Peacock blanket. So that idea had my brain going wild, and I do love a project that's going to really stimulate my brain, and that blanket really did. Some other reasons why it's number 1 on my list is the stitches that I used in the blanket. The stitches itself were not difficult. Some of them were a little bit tricky, but they were repetitive. So once you got about 5 stitches done, you knew all you had to do is repeat those 5 stitches. Or once you got 1 set done, you knew all you had to do was repeat that set. So it had a little bit of technical work in it, but it was not completely complicated. So I love that blanket in so many ways. And that's pretty much it, guys. If you wanted to make any one of those blankets, I've left the blanket playlist at the very first link in the description box down below, or in the more section down below. I've left that link there. You click on that link and you head off and you start creating, because these blankets are simply divine. There are other blankets that did not make the list. It's only because they weren't my top 10 favorite. However, one of them, which was the V-stitch blanket, the reason it didn't make my top 10 was the recording was a little bit old. It was when I was new on the channel, and I would love to make another V-stitch blanket. I think I mentioned this on the live as well, and I'll mention it again. We will be creating another V-stitch blanket. Keep your eyes peeled. Well, that's pretty much it, guys. You now know my top 10 favorite blankets, and the reason why they are in that top 10 list is because clearly I like them all. I love them all. Obviously, I like the Pretty as a Peacock blanket more than the others. But keep in mind, there will be plenty more blankets to come here on the channel, on top of clothing, on top of other crochet items. All right, thank you very much for joining us today and finding out what my top 10 blankets are. My name is Mary. This is Wow Crochet Designs, and I will catch you on my lives at 4 p.m. Wednesday afternoons or 10 a.m. Saturday mornings, Melbourne, Australia time. Marry that up with your country, and I'll catch you then. Ciao for now.